It was a cold and silent night in the small town of Everwood. The streets, illuminated only by scattered streetlights, were deserted. On that night, something terrible happened at the Whitmore mansion, an event that would shake the community forever. The body of John Whitmore, the patriarch of one of the most influential families in town, was found lifeless in his study. The clock struck midnight when the housekeeper, Mrs. Hudson, made the terrible discovery. John was lying beside his desk, with a fatal wound to his head. Around him, shards of glass were scattered on the floor, and a cup of tea had been knocked over. The window was open, allowing the cold night wind to invade the room. There were no signs of forced entry, and the door was locked from the inside. Who could have committed such an act? And more importantly, why? Detective Arthur Morgan was called to investigate the case. Known for his keen mind and ability to solve the most complex mysteries, he knew this would be a challenge worthy of his skills. Upon arriving at the mansion, he was met with a scene of controlled chaos. Police officers were trying to maintain order while onlookers gathered outside the gates. Morgan began his investigation by carefully examining the crime scene. He observed every detail attentively, from the position of the body to the surrounding objects. The cup of tea caught his attention. Why would John be drinking tea so late at night? And why was the window open on such a cold night? These seemingly insignificant details could contain valuable clues. The Whitmore family was large and complex. John had 3 children: Thomas, the eldest, who managed the family business; Emily, the middle child, known for her strong and independent temperament; and Richard, the youngest, who lived in the shadow of his older siblings. Each of them had reasons to hate their father, but who would have the courage to kill him? Thomas, with his cold and calculating demeanor, seemed the prime suspect. He was always in conflict with John over the direction of the family business. Emily, on the other hand, had a turbulent relationship with her father, often expressing her frustration explosively. Richard, the youngest son, always felt neglected and insignificant in John's eyes. As Detective Morgan interviewed each family member, the dark secrets of the Whitmores began to surface. Thomas revealed that he had had a heated argument with his father that very night about a major financial transaction. Emily confessed that she was furious with John for trying to control her love life. Richard, however, remained silent, observing everything with a distant and thoughtful gaze. Morgan knew he was dealing with a tangled web of lies and betrayals. Each answer seemed to lead to more questions. He needed to find the link that connected all these loose pieces. The clock kept ticking, and the pressure to solve the case was mounting. Who killed John Whitmore? And how did they do it without leaving a trace? The detective's next steps would be crucial in unraveling this mystery. He knew the answer was there, hidden in the shadows of the Whitmore mansion. With each clue, each interview, he came closer to the truth. But would he be able to solve the case before the killer struck again? As Morgan pondered his findings, a new twist emerged. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hudson, revealed a detail that could change the course of the investigation. She recalled seeing a mysterious figure near John's study shortly before the crime. Who could this person be? And what was their connection to John's death? The investigation was far from over, and each revelation brought new layers of complexity to the case. Morgan needed to act quickly, as time was his greatest enemy. He knew the key to solving the mystery lay in understanding the deepest secrets of the Whitmore family. Detective Morgan decided to follow up on the new lead provided by Mrs. Hudson. The mysterious figure she mentioned could be the missing piece of the puzzle. He asked the housekeeper to describe the person in detail, but she could only remember a vague silhouette, dressed in a long coat and a hat. Despite the imprecise description, Morgan knew he couldn't ignore this information. Morgan then summoned all the family members and the mansion staff for a new round of interrogations. He wanted to know where everyone was on the night of the crime. Thomas claimed he was in his private office, working on important documents. Emily said she was in her room, reading a book. Richard stated that he had gone out for a night walk, something he often did to clear his mind. Everyone's alibis seemed solid, but Morgan knew someone was lying. He then decided to explore another line of investigation: the contents of the spilled tea beside John's body. He sent the cup and the remaining liquid for laboratory analysis, suspecting there might be more to it than just tea. While waiting for the results, Morgan began examining the family's financial records. He discovered that Thomas had made a series of suspicious transactions in recent months. Large sums of money were transferred to overseas accounts without apparent explanation. Confronted with this discovery, Thomas denied any illicit involvement, claiming they were legitimate investments. However, Morgan was not convinced and decided to keep Thomas under surveillance. The lab results finally arrived, confirming his suspicions. The tea contained traces of a potent poison. This completely changed the course of the investigation. The killer had not only struck John, but also tried to poison him. This new information indicated that the crime was premeditated and carefully planned. Morgan then turned his attention to Emily. He knew she had a fiery temperament, but could she be capable of planning such a meticulous murder? He decided to interrogate her again, this time pressing more about her relationship with her father. During the conversation, Emily revealed something surprising. John had discovered her involvement with a controversial political activist and threatened to disinherit her if she didn't end the relationship. Emily was furious, but swore she would never harm her father. With two intriguing clues but no concrete evidence, Morgan decided to focus on Richard. The youngest son always seemed distant, but his reserved attitude could hide something darker. He discovered that Richard had a history of psychological problems and had been hospitalized in a psychiatric clinic. Morgan realized he needed to understand Richard's mental state better to determine if he could be the killer. While investigating more about Richard, he found a hidden diary in his room. The pages were filled with disturbing notes about his feelings of inadequacy and anger towards his father and siblings. Morgan was beginning to piece things together, but still needed concrete proof linking Richard to the crime. Tension in the Whitmore mansion increased as the investigation progressed. Everyone was suspicious and nervous, feeling the pressure of the suspicions hanging over the house. Morgan knew he was close to the truth, but still needed the final push to solve the mystery. Then, one night, while examining the crime scene again, Morgan found a small coat button stuck in a floor crack. It seemed insignificant at first glance, but it could be the crucial clue. Morgan collected the button and compared it with the suspect's coats. To his surprise, the button matched exactly with one of Richard's coats. Confronted with the evidence, Richard finally broke down. He confessed that he had planned his father's murder, feeling constantly humiliated and neglected. The poison in the tea was to ensure John did not survive if the blow failed. Richard had used the coat and hat to disguise his identity while moving around the house, but did not realize a small button had come loose. The case was solved, But the Whitmore family would never be the same. Detective Morgan, relieved to have solved the mystery, left the mansion with a sense of duty fulfilled, but also with the certainty that some secrets should remain buried. Detective Morgan was about to leave the Whitmore mansion when he was called to the main hall. All the family members were gathered, their faces reflecting a mixture of relief and sorrow. The air was heavy with the knowledge of the revealed truths and the open wounds that might never heal. Richard was taken away by the police, his confession echoing through the silent corridors of the mansion. Thomas, Emily, and Mrs. Hudson remained, trying to process what had happened. Morgan, with his characteristic air of determination, decided it was time to make a final statement. "This house has been the scene of a terrible crime, but also a painful revelation," he began, his voice firm and clear. John Whitmore was a complex man, whose actions and decisions deeply affected everyone around him. But above all, he was a father and the patriarch of a family that, despite its flaws, now needs to find a way to move forward. Thomas, who had always maintained a cold and calculating demeanor, finally showed signs of emotion. "I never imagined things would come to this," he said, his voice choked. "I only wanted the best for the family, but maybe I got lost along the way." Emily, with tears in her eyes, embraced Thomas. "We need to be strong now, for us and for the memory of our father," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We cannot let this tragic event destroy us." Morgan observed the scene, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. He knew that the truth, no matter how painful, was necessary for healing. "The truth has been revealed, and justice will be served," he continued. "But the real battle will be rebuilding the family ties that have been broken." As he left the mansion, Morgan felt the weight of his responsibility as a detective. Each solved case was a victory, but also a reminder of the complexities of human nature. The cold night wind blew gently, as if whispering ancient secrets and promises of new mysteries to be uncovered. With the Whitmore mansion fading behind him, Morgan looked up at the starry sky and reflected on the lessons learned. The quest for truth is never easy, but it is a necessary path to justice. And sometimes, in the midst of darkness, we find a light that guides us, not only to solve a crime, but to better understand the human condition. And so, with a mix of sadness and hope, Detective Arthur Morgan continued on his way, ready to face the next challenges that life and his profession would bring. The story of John Whitmore and his family would become an indelible memory, a testament that, even in the darkest circumstances, the truth will always find a way to come to light.